Welcome to Google. How many of you have been here before? We're here at the last kickoff meeting. Well, welcome back. So you can show the newer people around. The restrooms are out that door through and all the way against the wall past the pool table. And there's still plenty of food and stuff in the back. I'm really pleased that Google is hosting this event, and we are planning to do another tournament next year, this coming December.
And next year.
Yeah, and forever, I guess, until I am old and gray and hand it off to someone else. But this is the Power Puzzle Challenge is really cool because Google has started doing a lot of work with power. You see that ceiling there? About 18 inches above that ceiling is completely covered with solar panels. All of the buildings on this campus are covered with solar panels. And you can go somewhere on Google's website. There's this cute little graph that goes up and down and says how much power was generated from those solar panels. As an engineering organization, how many people think Google has a lot of computers? Okay, what do computers do besides break? They suck power and get really hot. A huge part of our engineering, I mean not huge software, but we do a lot of work to improve the efficiency of not just the computers, but the power supplies in the computers, the power distribution in a data center, to make everything more efficient. Because if we can squeeze 1%, that's 1% of power that we don't have to buy, and then an additional 1% of cooling that we don't have to pay for. And it makes a big difference, not to mention being just overall a good thing to do for the planet. So this is really exciting to have this common thread. So I will now hand it over to Mark. One last thing, we're recording this. It will be available on a website that Mark will announce on the mailing list. I'm not sure exactly what URL or anything, but you'll be able to see it again and show your friends.
All right, so as Glenn said, we are going to be recording this. We would like to have lots and lots of questions. A big part of having an event like this is to give everybody a chance to ask the early questions and to answer them as much as possible. But what I'd like to do is hold them as much as possible to a Q&A session at the end. And there's a microphone in the audience. We'll use it. When you've got a question, if you could, please step to the microphone. I'll repeat the question just to make sure that it gets recorded well, and then we'll go ahead and answer it. So if you got a question, maybe scribble it down. If it's really important and you're afraid of forgetting it, go ahead and raise your hand and ask, and we'll try to deal with it as we go. But as much as possible, we want to try to collapse them into one sort of question and answer session towards the end. So we're going to do sort of a quick and dirty run-through of this year's game. We're going to start off with some quick introductions. We'll talk about the Power Puzzle Project. It's a lot of P's, Power Puzzle Project. We'll talk about, I'll show a video that was put together by one of the first LEGO League partners in Wisconsin, Mark Kuchar, as a way of explaining the game. So it'll show you basically what the missions are in a visual way. I'll talk real briefly about some significant changes, wording changes to the rules. So it's going to be very important for everybody to really pay a lot of attention to reading the rules this year. So I'll cover some of the just real quick highlights. It's a lot more than we need to cover in detail here. And then we'll go into that all-important question and answer that gives everybody a chance to really get what they're coming for, what you came for. Like Glenn said, this video will be hosted. I don't know whether it'll be Google video. I guess Google video maybe doesn't exist anymore. Now it's just YouTube, or whether it'll be somewhere else. I don't know. Somewhere, the NCA FLL Yahoo group is where we will post the information about it. And then the slides themselves will be put up as PDFs under our website, ncafll.org, probably in about a week. Again, we'll send out an announcement when we get them up. So by way of introductions, I wanted to cover a couple things. Playing at Learning, that's Jill and I. Our Google hosts want to talk real quick about a t-shirt design contest similar to what we did last year, as well as talk real briefly about what kind of awards we're going to be looking at this year with the Northern California First Lego League Tournament. Playing at Learning is a 501c nonprofit, 501c3 nonprofit. Basically, that means we're a public charity. We're here to provide educational activities for kids. We are the partner for 3 of the 4 programs that are offered by FIRST. For those of you who are not familiar with FIRST, FIRST is an acronym. It stands for the Inspiration and Recognition of Science and Technology. Basically, it's programs designed to get kids inspired about science, technology, engineering, and those kinds of careers and educational paths. There are 4 programs: FIRST Robotics Competition, FIRST Tech Challenge, last year was known as FIRST VEX Challenge, FIRST Lego League, the one you're here to hear about, and Junior FIRST Lego League. So we cover the last 3 of those 4. As a nonprofit, we survive on donations. So, hint, hint, hint. We're always looking for more money. More money is good. We are all volunteer-based, so we don't have a paid staff at all. Everybody that works with us is a volunteer. And other big thing is we really like to think of ourselves as being community-based. And what that means is we serve you, but we also kind of rely on you to help us serve the rest of the community. And so it's sort of a give and take a little bit. We have several Google hosts. This is sort of the laundry list of the folks that have been working with us over the last year and a half, 2 years to help put on some of the events we've done in combination with Google. Albert Bodenhammer, Glenn Truitt, who was up here a few minutes ago, Meredith Carroll, she was wandering around here a few minutes ago. You probably ran into her in the lobby. Irene Ma, Emily Nishi, and Amber Issa. Again, this year we are going to be doing a t-shirt design contest. For those of you who didn't see them last year, ended up working out to be a lot of fun. We have to make a few changes in the way the voting worked. It ended up being a little too easier for people to sort of spam the voting system. We had probably 10,000 votes. 5,000 of them all came from one computer. So we have to figure that out a little bit. But it was a lot of fun. The teams that got into it and really got a kick out of it had a lot of fun creating the designs. And it was a lot of fun to see the shirts sort of propagate out through the tournaments. But basically what we're asking is for you as First Lego League teams to come up with t-shirt designs and send us your designs. We'll post them. We'll hold a vote. And then we'll, from the vote, select the shirt that is the winner and offer that for sale to the community. All the proceeds, 100% of the proceeds from those t-shirt sales go to support the First Lego League tournaments in Northern California. And as a reward, the team gets free shirts. So yeah, that's one way of getting your shirts done for free. So last year it was a 4-color shirt with a nice set of logos on the back, sort of a First Lego League tournament tour shirt. So the deadline here may change. That was actually last year's deadline. I didn't look to see what calendar date, whether that's a Monday, a Tuesday, or a Wednesday. It'll probably end up being a Friday we'll pick, just so you have something more to worry about at the end of a week. The awards we're going to be giving out at the Northern California Championship this year are pretty much in line with what you'll find in the coach's manual. So for all of you coaches, you should be either have gotten already or going to be getting a manual like this as part of registering your team. So it describes quite completely what the awards are, and we pretty much stick straight with that award structure. We do a few things. Outstanding coach mentor, we do an outreach award. We feel very strongly about reaching out to new communities, new students, and we also do an outstanding volunteer. For those 3 awards, we will need nominations, and we like to get those from the community. So if you see things that really are outstanding in terms of people working with the kids or making an effort to push First Lego League into places it hasn't been before, or really somebody that at one of the events that really strikes you as going above and beyond in terms of being a good volunteer, let us know. Tell us what they did. We love to recognize them. FIRST is not just about the robot game. FIRST LEGO League is not just about the robot game. And if you really stopped and looked at the way FIRST defines its core values, the robot game is just 1/4 of what the program delivers. It's going to be very important this year to make sure that you pay attention to all 4 areas. FIRST is trying to push this idea of core values as being important to all awards. So for example, normally at a tournament, they'll be giving out a Robot Performance Award, and a Teamwork Award, and a Research Project Award, and a Robot Design Award. Well, if your team is lacking in some of the core values, like maybe they do a really good job with the project and the design and the performance, but they fight like cats and dogs, that's not showing good core values, so that the teamwork side's missing. The instruction we're getting from FIRST this year is that could be enough to be a disqualifying activity for the remainder of the awards. And so the awards don't stand alone. They emphasize one of the 4 key areas, but they all draw from that same core set of values. So keep that in mind. There'll be a lot more coming through the season as it goes, but it's going to be a lot more important this year to really try to make the kids and the teams well-rounded. Help them understand how to do all aspects of what's going on. Okay, so moving right along, probably too quickly, but nobody likes to listen to this. They all want to hear about the game, so we'll go as quickly as we can. The project this year is basically to select a building. So the Power Puzzle project this year, select a building. Evaluate how it uses energy. Talk to experts about that kind of a building. See what they've learned, how those ideas can be applied. Propose solutions to how the energy usage of the building can be reduced, or how it can start moving towards alternative energy resources. For example, Glenn's example of there now being solar panels on the roof of this building. And then the classic share. So they'd like you to go out and share with the community. In general, all research projects for FIRST LEGO League are going to have something similar to this. Explore, propose, share. So learn, propose, share. So this year, it's about buildings. So picking something that the kids are familiar with, their school, somebody's house, the McDonald's down the street, the roller rink they all like to go to, whatever makes sense for what they're excited about. There are several resources available for the teams. So there is a DVD that FIRST sent to all teams as part of the coaches package that has examples of past research projects. There are a couple of topical videos as part of the University of Wisconsin videos that were posted. Links for those should be underneath the FIRST LEGO League website. I've got it here as well. And then there'll be a whole resource page underneath the FIRST LEGO League website. So there should be a bunch of resources there for the project. We are also working with several local companies to try to get speakers. And so if that ends up working out, we may end up with a couple of mini seminars, and then also probably some guest speakers at some of the tournaments. With that, I'm going to break into the video. This is available on the web. The link that's there is where it comes from. I'm going to let Mark Kuchar from Wisconsin put this together. I'm going to let him do the talking.
Roof solar panel. Mission: move the roof solar panel onto the roof of the house by the sea for 15 points. Personal vehicle choice. Mission: move the hydrogen car to the white property or all black driveway of the house by the sea. Move the truck either to the parking lot to be recycled or to the farm to be repurposed. The car in its target is worth 25 points only if the truck is in one of its targets. The parking lot is the white area directly west of the base. The farm is the white area isolated between both rivers. Hydro dam. Mission: place the dam so it is touching both banks of any river section east of base for 25 points. The dam must be upright. When the match is over, the referee places or projects the flood upstream of the dam, and there is a single maximum 10-point deduction if any houses are being touched by the dam or flood. The dam is never considered a stray object. Wind turbines. Mission: place wind turbines so they are touching any white area not directly outside base. The wind turbines must be upright. Scoring wind turbines are worth 15 points each. Grid connection. Mission: place the power lines so they are touching the white of the power plant's property and the white of the surrounding communities. The power lines must be upright. Communities connected to the power plant's property in this way are worth 5 points each. Each connected community that is in turn touching a scoring hydro dam or scoring wind turbine is worth an added 5 points. Solar power satellite. Mission: lower one of the satellite's panels for 15 points. If your robot is the first to do this, 5 points are added. The satellite dish will tip toward the team that accomplishes this mission first. Wave turbine. Mission: bring your own team-designed wave turbine, one per team, and move it to the ocean directly west of the sandy beach. A scoring wave turbine is worth 25 points. Coal mining. Mission: get the loaded rail car to roll down the railroad tracks. Only if and when the loaded rail car touches the stoppers at the end, the team is allowed to retrieve it to base by hand for 10 points. Oil drilling. Mission: move all the oil barrels, including the red version, off the oil platform for 10 points. Corn harvest and processing. Mission: move all the corn, including the red version, to base. The corn in its target is worth 25 points only if at least one oil barrel has been moved to the farm. Uranium mining. Mission: move all the uranium, including the red version, out of the farm for 15 points. Power plant supply. Mission: move fuel to the power plant's property. Trees, 10 points each, maximum of 2. For each tree to score as fuel, another tree must be scored as planted. Black coal, 10 points for at least half of the original load. Green uranium, 10 points each. White oil barrels, 5 points each. Since energy is needed in order to find and process fuels, and since the processing and consumption of fuels often involves undesirable effects and byproducts, The red versions of the fuel models represent inefficiency and negative impacts which need to be minimized. There must be no red fuel models in the power plant area for this mission to count. The separation or processing of red fuel models from others may be done by the robot anywhere or by hand in base. Tree planting. Mission: move trees to any area north of the main river. Trees must be upright. Pieces may be connected or attached to the trees. Planted trees are worth 10 points each. Trees moved to the power plant area could score as fuel, but do not score as planted. Oil barrels. Oil barrels of either color are worth 10 points each in base, or the parking lot, as unused reserves. But if you rescue the robot while there are oil barrels in base, the referee takes one away so it does not score. White will be taken before red. If there are no oil barrels in base at the time of the rescue, there is no loss. There is a single 40-point deduction if any oil barrel from anywhere is touching any water or property with a house. Parking lot. The parking lot is designated as a storage area with respect to the housekeeping rule. So the team is allowed to move objects to and from the parking lot by hand for storage only. The robot is allowed to enter and exit the parking lot, but it is not allowed to make contact with scoring objects nor strategic objects there. Fairness bonus. Based on well-documented scoring data from the 2006 FLL tournament season, a fairness bonus is applied to the non-perfect raw scores earned by teams who are still using the RCX platform, so that similar amounts of effort are reflected by similar scores as follows. Every 5 raw points up to 100 are worth 8 points. Raw scores from 105 to 325 get 60 points added. Raw scores from 330 to 395 are replaced by scores of 386 to 399 respectively.
So a lot going on this year. So I think at this point, I'm going to go ahead and break into more of a question and answer. So I have a set of slides that one per each mission that we can use as background while we're answering questions. But I think the easiest way to go from here is to turn it more into a discussion. You've heard enough, now it's your turn to talk. So I know there's a gentleman over here who's been eager to ask a question since the beginning. If you could, please step up to the microphone.
Please. Is it on?
Looks like we have a first question. Technical people are working on it.
Is it on yet?
It
Yes.
sounds on.
Great. It's on.
What was the raw score mean?
In the fairness bonus.
What was the fairness in the raw scores again?
So the question is what does raw score mean in the fairness bonus? So the raw score would be the score that the team earns ignoring fairness bonus. It then gets adjusted by applying the fairness bonus heuristic, method, formula, equation, whatever you want to call it, to come up with an adjusted score. So the raw score is what the team actually earned by performing missions. They get a different number as an end after applying the fairness bonus.
Okay, thank you.
How does the 386 to 399 slope look? Do you have a graph of that?
Very good question. So if you want to see what the fairness bonus does, the blue line represents the raw score. So basically what it is for every 5 points you get 8 up into 100 points, and then it's just plus 60 points for the remainder up until you get to some point where it tapers back off to match the raw score again. So that's what the fairness bonus looks like. I can't imagine what the scoring spreadsheet's going to look like this year, but it's going to be very entertaining. Question?
You said that when you can't move things out of the parking lot with the robot, but if your robot is trying to complete, say, the oil mission and it bumps into one, is that like if you accidentally break something, it doesn't deduct your points?
That one would be a good one for the Q&A. My guess would be that benefit of the doubt is going to apply, right? So the referee is going to be watching what's going on, and he's going to understand intent. So if the robot accidentally hits something and goes on its way and doesn't actually do anything with the object that it hit, it's probably not going to be important. But if it's like the example that was on the video, if the robot drives out, picks up the dam, drives the dam over to the river, that's intent. But that would be a good one for the Q&A.
Does the robot have to pick up the dam to move it?
So the question is, does the robot have to pick up the dam to move it? An important thing to remember in looking at any of the challenges is don't make it harder than the challenge description does. Okay. If the challenge doesn't say you have to do it in a particular way, don't think that you do. So I believe, though, it says move it to. Right? So if that's the words, it doesn't tell you how you have to move it. It just tells you what you have to do. The how is for you to invent.
Okay, thank you.
If there's questions, just come on, line up behind the microphone. That'd be the easy thing.
What if you wanted to do the mission for moving the dam? If it's in the parking lot, are you allowed to move it?
So the way the rule about the parking lot is, that's a place for you to store things. The robot can't move things from the parking lot into any place that scores. You as a human could move the dam into the base, get it ready for the robot to deliver, and then have the robot deliver it.
Okay.
For delivering the pickup truck to the parking lot, can the robot move the pickup truck into the parking lot? That's moving it within the parking lot with intent by the robot. So can you do that? Or do you have to bring it to base and then you put it in the parking lot?
That's a good question, and again, would probably be one for the Q&A. In general, you are allowed to handle things that are in the parking lot. Right? The parking lot and the base are the same for housekeeping purposes. The question would be is whether or not it getting there by robot action into the parking lot by robot action versus by human action is important. I don't know the answer to that. That's a good one for the Q&A.
All right.
So for those of you who don't know what the Q&A is, Scott Evans, the gentleman that designs the game every year, maintains a long list of questions and answers. So there's an email address that's in your coach's manual, and it's also posted on the First Lego League website. It is the resource for when you run into questions that you can't get an answer to. Some of these questions, this is a new way of looking at the game. You send him an email, he answers your question. If he thinks it's important enough, he's gotten 10 emails about it, he'll add it to the Q&A. Yes?
Okay, so when you take the corn back to base, by the end of the time, does it have to be in the base, or can you take it out?
In general, scoring is about where things are at the end of the 2.5-minute round, 2.5-minute match. It would depend on where take it out means. Did I take it from base to the parking lot? Did I take it from base and take it out? Did I talk to the referee before I was doing it? So it's probably isn't an issue, right? So probably if the robot has clearly brought it back to base and you as a human picked it up and moved it over to the parking lot, that's going to be fine. If you think it's still in your way, talk to the referee. The referee is going to be watching what's going on.
Okay.
During the skit, I noticed that he said that if you don't move the barrels to your base or the parking lot, you would lose points. Is it either a robot has to move all the barrels, or if there's one behind, could you pick it up and place it in your base?
So the penalty, so you're asking questions about the oil barrel penalty?
Yes, sir.
So the oil barrel penalty is particular to barrels that are in either the water or on a property that has a house. So if it's not in either of those two spots, there's no penalty. And so it's not about all, it's about any. So
I'm aware of that. It's just that if your robot accidentally turns a bit, causing one of them to get away from the robot, so I can't bring them all back. Is it possible to you as a human to put it in your base? If it's still in the water, do you have to tell your robot to go back and get it?
In general, the robot is the only thing that can move any object that's outside of the parking lot and the base area.
Okay.
So you can move things from parking lot into base. The robot can move things from base out onto the field or from out on the field back into base. But you couldn't reach out and grab a barrel out of water just because it fell off the robot. Right?
Okay.
You'd have to maybe have a contingency plan for how your robot could go pick that up later.
Okay. Thank you.
Are you allowed to use any of the new sensors that they came out with this year?
There's a specific set of sensors that are allowed. I believe it's still the same as last year, so it is just the standard Mindstorm sensors. So 2 light, 2 touch, 3 minus the number of NXT motors rotation sensors. I think that's the same as last year. They allowed it last year. I would guess. Yeah, I would guess they'll allow it. It's always good to have a distraction.
Is there any? Do you get more points if both teams do the competitive cooperative mission?
So it isn't a cooperative mission this year.
Yeah.
I think if you notice this year, there is a part that is scored regardless of what the other team does, and there's a part that is scored based on who does it first.
Okay.
Right, so there's a 10 or 15 point value for lowering a solar panel. Then there's a 5-point value associated with who lowered the solar panel first. So who's the antenna pointing at? So it's not shared this year.
Are you allowed to use RoboLab for the NXT this year?
The only 2 software packages you're allowed to use for the NXT are the NXTG and RoboLab.
Are you scored based on the number of moves you make per task?
One more time?
Are you scored based on the number of movements you make per task?
The number of movements you make for tasks is not important as what you accomplish. So it's not how you do things, it's what you do. So did you get the truck from the house to the farm or to the parking lot? It's the what you did, not how you did it. If you could figure out how to have it fly, that'd be cool, and that would be acceptable.
Has there ever been a problem with the robot overloading during mid-contest?
Can you tell me more about what you mean by overloading?
Well, just something breaking, coming off, or the program doing something wrong, skipping itself.
Having watched lots and lots of matches, I would believe the answer to that has to be a definitive yes.
Okay.
So pretty much anything you can imagine going wrong, I think probably has to some kid at some point. Robots coming apart in funny ways, particularly with the RCXs, the infrared light causing stray programming of the robot. It suddenly doesn't behave like it was supposed to. Motors dying. So things like that do happen to this kind of equipment.
Okay.
Is the parking lot considered part of the house? Any of the houses?
I don't think the parking lot's considered part of the houses. The houses are clearly red roofs on the map when you look at them, and there is no red roof in the parking lot area.
Okay, so then if you put one of the white barrels in there, you wouldn't get any points off?
That's my understanding. There's no penalty for an oil barrel being in the parking lot.
Okay.
For the flight panel, is there any specific... thanks. For the flight panel, is there any specific way to build it?
The flight panel?
Yeah.
Which piece are you referring to?
And the one you moved to the house.
Oh, the solar panel?
Yeah.
The instructions for building each of the field models is on the CD that is in the kit with the pieces.
Okay.
So when the kit with all the box full of the 1,500 or so Lego pieces came, there's a CD in it that has complete instructions on how to build all of the models.
Okay.
So the movie had said that moving the solar panel onto the roof is worth 15 points, but the website says 20 points.
So the movie is older than the website. What's in the information that's published on the website is what I would go with. It's possible that either of them is in error. I added up the total of the points based on what was in the movie, and it adds up to 400. So if they change that to 25, it makes me think that they've got to take 10 away from somewhere else. But what's on the website will be the definition. And again, the Q&A, if there really is a difference between them, that's an important difference, it'll get addressed in the Q&A.
For the water turbo, do you make that? Are there instructions for it, or?
The wave turbine is your invention.
Okay, so you make it and you put it on the field and let your robot push that all the way.
The way the challenge is written, it has to have 2 independently moving parts. Beyond that, it's up to your imagination. So it's whatever you think would make a cool-looking wave turbine.
And I had another question.
Mm-hmm.
When you press the oil rig, and you have the 3 oil things come out, does the robot have to? Because they fall out into the ocean, and so the robot has to get them and move them back to base, and where you put them in the parking lot, or?
Well, that's up to you, right? So the mission for the oil drilling is to get the barrels off of the oil platform. So if you're trying to avoid the penalty of the oil barrels being in the water, you may have to come up with a solution of dealing with that. But the mission for the oil drilling itself is just get the barrels off.
Okay.
So you'll have to make that decision.
I was listening to her question about the oil thing. Does that mean if it falls from the oil rig into the water, that counts as a penalty?
It's at the end of the 2.5 minutes. If the referee looks around and sees a barrel in the water or a barrel on property that has a house, he'll assess the penalty then. It's not about what happens during the match. So the barrel could fall in the water, the robot could then pick it up and carry it away. That's not a problem.
And one last question. Do the red barrels count as penalties if they're in an area other than your base or parking lot?
Only in the condition of the general oil barrel penalty, right? So it's if they end up being in water or on property with a house, they count the penalty just like the white ones do. Also, in terms of supplying power to the power plant, if a red one of anything, a red uranium, a red coal, or a red oil shows up there, there's no points, right? There can be no red fuel at the power plant.
Okay. Is it also, say you have your robot brought in the barrels from the oil rig, and one of them, your table isn't completely level, and one of the barrels rolls back into the water. Do you have to tell your robot to go back and get it, or can you put it back in?
That one is so situational. I'd leave that one up to the referee at the time.
Okay.
So the referees are human. They like to have a conversation with you as you're going, right? They like to kind of cheer along with you as things are happening. So talk to him. Say, hey, ref, that one just rolled away. Can I grab it and bring it back? So if it's something that happened because you bumped it and it fell, he's likely to let you do that. If it's something that the robot pushed and made, he'll have to decide based on what he sees at that time.
Okay, thank you.
For the wave turbine thing, what do you mean by independently moving pieces? So it's like, it's like there's this thing that lets you turn. So it can turn without you moving it, or
it's just 2 things that move separately from each other. They don't have to have a relationship. It doesn't have to do anything purposeful, but it needs to have 2 moving parts. 2 separate moving parts, independent, right? So my arm and my leg, you know?
They don't have to move by themselves.
And they don't have to move by themselves. But that would be kind of cool if they did.
What's the maximum amount of points you can get?
So pending the answer to the question about what the difference between the roof solar panel is, it 15 points or is it 25 points? It's either 400 or 410. In years past, it's always been 400. Like for the last 3 or 4 years, the maximum score has been 400. I would bet that that was the target this year.
Yeah.
So that's what I would expect. I added up based on the video. 400 is what I got.
Okay.
400.
Okay, thank you.
I have 2 questions. One, it talked about moving the truck either to the farm or to the parking lot.
Yes.
Is there any point difference between those 2 areas?
No.
Okay.
So the actual thing that scores in that situation isn't the truck. The truck is an enabler for the car to score. So the car being at the house only scores if the truck is either in the parking lot for recycling or at the farm for repurposing.
Okay. The second question is for the wave turbine. Do you know if there are parts included in the kit that you purchase? So you have to use it from another Lego set.
Yeah, so there are not parts in the field setup kit to build the wave turbine. It's equivalent to building something like your robot. But now you're building some little model that represents the team's view of a wave turbine.
This brings me to a third question. The robot itself, are there specific parts only allowed to be used to build the robot?
There are limits on the electrical parts.
The sensors and things
beyond that, it's things made by Lego that are in a like new condition, meaning that they haven't been modified. No tape, no glue, no soldering irons, snips, saws, drills, none of that.
Okay, thank you.
So by meaning we can have 2 independently moving parts, does that mean we can just have a non-friction, one of those little connector pins with 2 things attached to either side of it? Because that would have 2 independent.
It's kind of hard to imagine what you just described. I'd have to see it. And I don't think that the judging of this, these aren't going to be judged models. That's not the critical part. They want you to be a little bit creative with it, but it's the robot delivering something to a specific spot on the mat with a specific intent.
Okay, thanks.
Exactly what website can you watch the mission videos?
So the easiest way to find them would be to go to the First Lego League website, so www.firstlegoleague.org, and there should be links there to the videos.
Okay.
A team with which I'm acquainted noticed some missing parts from the field setup kit. What does one do about that?
So there are a couple of errors in the instructions for the field setup kit. And so you should go look at the addendum. It's actually one of the first things. It's like the 3rd or 4th Q&A right now. So there were some color differences in the parts and some pieces that weren't put in so that they show up magically in the instructions. So you kind of have to look for them. If you're used to doing Lego models, you just kind of adapted to it. If you do run into missing pieces, if you grab your coach's manual and flip it open to the back, there's a tech support section that has information on how to get support for the kit. And basically it's calling up Lego Education and letting them know what you're missing, and they're pretty good about getting replacement pieces.
So, but the problem is as likely as not to be that we're following slightly wrong instructions.
There's 2 models that have errors. The one is the power plant. So the tiles that go on the top of the roof of the power plant in the instructions are described as being gray. They're actually black. And then I forget which of the other models, the truck, there's a couple of little tiles again, or tiles or plates that are shown as being needed in one step, but they're not actually installed in that step. And then a couple steps later, they magically appear. Any other questions?
Yes. In the power line challenge, they talk about connecting a community. You have any idea what a community is?
It's a white area with houses.
So that each area that's separated by a road is a separate community then?
I believe that's correct.
Okay. The wind turbines are supposed to be pushed to a white area not immediately next to base. Does that mean then it basically has to go across the big river?
That's a very good question. We asked this question when Scott showed us the game originally, and the question we had was, does this count and does this count? And so it's not clear to me because this is all one white area. The white connects all the way around. So I'm sure that's one that's going to end up getting addressed in the Q&A, whether or not that counts as not directly next to base. The safe ones are pretty obvious, right? The ones at the far north of the table and the ones more towards the house by the sea. Sir.
For the rail one, if some of the pieces fall out, does it count as any penalty?
I don't believe there's any penalties associated with the coal mining mission. And if you read very carefully the way it's worded, it's about the rail car itself. Talk to the referee. Ask him. The actual mission you need to do with the coal itself involves delivering some of the coal to the power plant. And it's not specific about the number. It's more than half the load. And again, I would bet your referees are going to not be sitting there spending a lot of time counting. They're going to make an eyeball guess. Did he deliver most of the black? And they're going to give you the benefit of the doubt.
I got a few questions here. So it says that we can add things to the trees, but can we add things to the solar panels and the wind turbines?
In general, there have been relatively flexible rules about adding structure to field models. The general guideline has been things that can be easily undone and don't cause damage to the model. They specifically talked about it with respect to the trees. They didn't talk about it for the other two.
Yes.
Be a good one for the Q&A. My guess is going to be that he's going to allow it with that same sort of fine print. You got to make sure that it doesn't damage the field models. The thing to remember is at the tournaments, these models have to turn around and be ready for use by another team in a couple of minutes. And so if what you do causes a lot of issues for disassembly or makes it hard to have the model ready for use, the referees are likely to disallow it.
Okay. So with the oil barrels, we're bringing them back to base first. After that, are we allowed to move them to the parking lot and back?
So that fits into the housekeeping rule.
Okay.
In general, for the purposes of managing the things that you're working with, the parking lot and the base are equivalent.
Okay. So in previous years, people have always had alignment items that they've used. Now, is it okay to build a pen to stick in the parking lot area to hold things?
I didn't see anything that said it wasn't.
Okay.
That's that same, don't make it harder than Scott makes it.
Mm-hmm.
So Scott does a pretty good job of making the game hard.
Yeah, I can see that. Thanks.
I believe the north, south, east, and west has changed this year compared to previous years. Could you tell me again what north, south, east, and west are on this year's game?
So the easy thing to do is to look at the map. He's always put a compass rose on the map that clearly marks what's north, what's south, what's east, what's west. This year it happens to be up in the corner of the ocean. So the base is on the south edge, in the middle, the north edge. Now I have to stop and remember the east side and the west side.
And can I bring my own deliverables to the table in a competition preloaded with whatever attachments, therefore, I put on it?
No. In general, you're required to use the field models that are at the table. It's the only way to guarantee consistency across all the teams.
If one of the field model breaks, is that a penalty?
Depends on why and how. Things like that are going to happen. A lot of it has to do with whether or not the referee decides that it was part of strategy. So if the referee sees you driving fast and crashing through things, he may decide that that was part of your strategy. At that point, he doesn't have to allow scoring. If it looks like it was an accident and that it was something that happened as a result of something going wrong, he's likely not going to penalize you. But it's going to be based on the situation at the time. There's no one hard and fast answer.
And I have one more question. Is the satellite thing going to be securely fastened to the table and like it is now? Because I've seen people pushing it in accident, almost falling off.
Yeah, I haven't looked at the field setup description of how that works, but I am sure that it's going to be pretty securely fastened across 2 tables. Because remember, at the tournaments, it's not 1 table, it's 2 set up. So it's actually half on the other team's table and half on your table.
Okay, but if it isn't securely that well, and if you like you accidentally bump it and it falls under the other contestant table, what happens? Do you like a timeout to put it back or something like that?
It's going to depend on the situation. Because it's in the middle of the table, it may be difficult to reach. The referees will have to make a spot decision based on what's going on at the time.
Okay, thank you.
Regarding the oil barrel penalties, I see it says that in the water or on properties with a house. Can you define the property? Because I don't see any space that there is on that map that there isn't a house in the property.
Well, the power plant.
Yeah.
So it's again back to the question of, does this count as being part of this?
Yes.
So that's the one I can see that might be different. There's a house here, house here, house here.
The
power
farm?
plant, house, and then the big house, the house by the sea, is in the last space. So you may be right. There may not be, but just this one. So it may be kind of a, if you don't get the oil controlled safely, you may be in trouble.
Okay.
So where will the satellite thing be? Will it be in the middle so it lines up on both tables, or?
I believe that's the correct description of where it belongs. Exactly in the middle of the north edge of the table, set up so that it is equal for both sides.
All right, thanks.
Does the dock count as part of the parking lot or no?
Good question. I'm not sure. Q&A.
Okay, thanks.
My guess would be yes.
Hi again. So under this thing here, it says that the corn counts, and you get the points for it if an oil barrel is moved to the farm.
Right.
Which has a house on it.
That's a good question for the Q&A. So I would bet that he's going to have to clarify that one, because that's a specific. There is a set of guidelines in the rules that talk about mission rules overriding each other and overriding the generic rules. That may be a situation where, because the mission specifically requires you to do that, it would be unreasonable to penalize you for it.
Yeah. Okay.
Not that he wouldn't do that. For those that aren't familiar, last year's game ended up being easier than Scott had envisioned. At the World Festival, there were 10 teams that put up perfect scores. And in fact, the top 2 teams put up 3 perfect scores. So it was a tie for first place at the World Festival. The next team had 2 perfect scores, and the next 7 teams all had 1. And so he spent the entire tournament standing there shaking his head as these teams were going by. And this is what we get.
So in the mission talked about setting up the power line. It talks about connecting communities with the power line or the power plant. And then in the oil bearer mission, it talks about any property with a house. So it sounded like you were describing as property the thing that had been described as community before.
They may be synonyms.
That's what I'm wondering.
Equivalent. And again, that's one that'll probably get clarified in the Q&A.
Okay.
What exactly he means by property versus community.
Does the built house, the one with the solar panel mission, count as a house in the sense of the oil barrel penalty?
My guess would be yes. Again, I would expect that'll be Q&A. It looks like, so when you look down on it from the top, it looks like a big one of all the other ones. So guess is going to be yes.
Okay, thanks.
Do the two boats in the ocean count as houses or ocean?
Do they count as, so, well, it sounds like your question has something behind it.
It's just that the two boats seem very mysterious.
They seem mysterious.
Like they're there for someone to use them for strategic moves.
I don't know. So this would be a good one for you to ask the FLL tech guy, Mr. Scott Evans. Tell him what you're thinking about doing with the boat. You know, ask him good questions. He likes good questions. It's part of his fun.
The boat's already been in the Q&A.
Already?
Yeah, if the barrel lands on the boat, it's okay.
It's not in the water.
Cool.
See? Cool. So there's a solution. Just stack all your barrels on the boats.
Does a farm count as a house?
The farm count as a house. Those look like houses to me. So that was the question somebody asked earlier. Well, if we have to put an oil barrel here, how can you penalize us for it? So if this counts as a property with a house, then that oil barrel would be a penalty. And it's not a little penalty either. It's like 40 points, right? And it's only 25 points for delivering the car. 15 points for retrieving the corn.
With the increased focus on the students doing all 4 aspects of the competition this year, is there going to be a penalty if they do not do a research project at all?
It will likely mean that they won't advance out of a qualifier.
Okay.
Where are the property lines?
Property lines. Ask me what you're thinking.
Like the property, the houses with the property with houses. I mean, where do you draw the line for property? Basically, where every white spot that has a house that's not cut by a river. I don't know.
It's a very good question. So is the road part of the property or not in the property?
Yeah, mostly.
I don't know.
And what
That sounds like a lot like the boat question. And it may get the same answer, and I would bet that somebody's going to ask it. Maybe you. But so detailed rulings like that about the particular missions really can only come from FLL Tech. So that is the final determination of how the details of the particular missions get assessed.
Okay.
So that would be the place to ask.
Okay. And what are with the puzzle pieces on certain parts?
You mean these?
Yes.
I don't know. So
They
when
just
I
seem
first...
like random. Like just...
I don't think they're random. That doesn't fit Scott Evans. He doesn't do things randomly. He's very purposeful. So when I first saw the mat, I actually ran around with a camera and I took pictures of all of them. I haven't had a chance yet to try to piece all the puzzle pieces together, but I bet it says something.
Maybe.
So how about a free T-shirt to the first person that can tell me what it says? How about that?
I don't see a lot of cheering.
Regarding the qualification for going past the qualifier, if you don't have a project, would they be even allowed to go to the qualifier if they don't have a project?
This is something that'll be probably discussed amongst the qualifying partners.
Okay.
So for anybody who's interested in participating, we have a committee that's been meeting roughly once a month to do the planning for the Northern California Championship, as well as some coordinated planning for the qualifying tournaments. That's the kind of question that comes up and belongs at that environment. So for any of you that are interested in participating in that, seeing the inner workings of getting a tournament like that going, drop us an email. We're always looking for fresh volunteers. We're done? Any more questions? No more questions? If nobody has it, uh-oh.
Well, you said something about major rule changes, and I haven't heard anything about that yet.
Major rule changes. So it's mostly about rewriting. He spent a lot of time trying to figure out where were the questions he was getting coming from every year. So he's been Scott Evans has been slowly working at refining the rules, the generic rules. He put a lot of effort into this year into collapsing them into the smallest set of definitions that he can. So in particular, in the past, he's had this long set of definitions of onto, into, completely, on, in, contained by. It's a much smaller set, and it's much more concisely worded. Everything falls back to that. He used to have a lot of very complicated rules that dealt with deliverables, retrievables, strategic objects, stray objects. They're all a lot simpler, a lot more clearly defined. So it's the same intent, but with a more emphasis on removing some of the ambiguity. But it's worth spending the time to go through them and read them. Another couple of things that got added this year. It is specifically now your team is supposed to get at least 3 rounds. And that the high score you get is what matters in terms of the Robot Performance Award. Other awards can look at other metrics related to the score, but Robot Performance is about the high score of at least 3 rounds. So it's the first time that's actually been coded directly into the rules. A few other little things like that, but that's the bulk of it. Sir?
Does the kind of like the street on the power lines, do the power lines, can they just go like anywhere that's not a river?
Anywhere that's not a river. The goal of the power lines is to connect the power plant and communities, right? So you're connecting power plant with communities. So as long as you're doing that, you'll get some score for it.
Okay, but if you like after you place it and then your like robot bumps into it, what happens? Like nothing? Just move on?
Remember, the one key thing about scoring is it's the state of the table at the end of the 2.5 minutes that determines the scoring. So if in driving around your robot accidentally unscores something, that's what'll happen.
Tough luck.
So, but if in reaching out and grabbing your robot to bring it back like it was going crazy, you bump it and knock it over, the referee will set it back to what it was before you bumped it. Okay. But if the robot does it, that's the robot's fault. If you do it, it shouldn't have happened.
Oh yeah, and for the coal mining thing, if it's like going down the hill and then like some of the coal starts falling out, what happens?
Talk to the referee.
Okay.
It's going to depend on what's going on at the time.
I'm not sure how this would work, but would it count as more points if the grid connection power lines touch multiple communities?
It was a per community scoring. I believe they said 5 points per community connected to the power plant. So if you can figure out how to connect all the communities, a lot of points. And remember, you get an extra 5 points if the community is either connecting, when it's all connected, you get the hydro dam in there or a windmill in there.
Could you say something about the design part of the scoring, and is that related at all to the research project?
So the question was about the scoring of the design portion of First LEGO League. There are 3 judged categories and 1 robotic performance category. The robot performance is about the number of points the robot scores on the table. The other 3 all involve an interview with a panel of judges. They're going to ask some questions. The team's going to have a discussion about, so in the case of robot design, why they made the choices, what they did, what else did they try, what process did they go through. So the judges are going to spend some time understanding what the kids did in doing the design. They're then going to rank that against all the other teams and come up with who was the strongest, who was the next strongest, and so on. It's not really an absolute, it's a relative.
Does that affect the score or how far they go in the qualifying?
It's comparative. There's not really an absolute number that you can give it. It's comparing this team to that team, which one had a stronger design. So at the tournaments, they typically give out a first place award, a second place award, possibly a third place award.
Does it affect if you go on to the next level in the tournament?
So this year, we're pushing the tournaments to use the Champions Award criteria. So we're looking for teams that are strong in all categories. Depends on how the team does in the other categories. So a team that does a superior design job, but maybe does a mediocre project and a mediocre robot performance may not end up being strong enough across all 4 categories to advance.
About the floodwaters, it's clear that it's bad that if they hit the houses, but when you're trying to connect all the things into one community, what happens if the floodwater hits, like, the power lines or the windmills?
I don't believe that was actually listed in the challenge. That would be a good one for the Q&A. Specifically, they talk about hitting houses, right?
I think actually in the Q&A they explained that a little bit. There was a question about if the flood hits the side of the playing field.
That's in the case of...
I think the judge is supposed to either put it in place or just project it from the back of the dam.
The question was a little different. What happens if the flood hits the power plant or hits a windmill? Something that wasn't described as being a penalizing structure on the field. So it's a little different. So I would guess it's probably going to get the same answer.
Does it matter if you do the tasks in order?
There's no required order to the tasks. There are some tasks that are related. Right? For example, the corn harvest can only get points if oil's been dropped off at the farm. The personal vehicle choice can only score if the truck's delivered to either be recycled or to the farm. But it doesn't say when or what order you have to do those in, just what you have to do. But in general, you can do any of the missions in whatever order you want, and you can try them as many times as you want, as long as you follow the rules for the missions.
Are you allowed to reconfigure the robot during play?
In base, the teams may add attachments, remove attachments, change programs, load deliverables, unload retrievables, aim, interact with any of the buttons or sensors on the robot in preparation for it going off to do new missions.
They could theoretically rebuild the whole robot if they want. Is there really something about attachments?
So the question was, is they could theoretically rebuild the robot. Yes, they could theoretically rebuild the whole robot if they thought they had enough time. Attachments has been pretty popular with a lot of the teams as a way of partially rebuilding the robot. The question was, what is the amount of time allowed to do all the missions? Like years past, 2.5 minutes, 150 seconds. And remember, you'll get at least 3 tries at any tournament. 150. I'm pretty sure. I remember my math. 60 plus 60 is 120, plus 30 is 150.
Can you please put up the slide about the research project again? Okay, so if a building also has a lot of its power usage from, say, the parking lot, or a lot of its efficiency from the solar panels that are above the parking lot, is that included as part of the stuff that the kids can be looking at?
I don't see why not. The thing is to get them to look at something that's a power-consuming entity, understand it, understand its impacts, understand what can be done to, improve it, get it using more alternative resources. I can't imagine that they would over-constrain it that way. It's about getting the kids to explore. Right?
Okay.
Go apply real thinking about their environment and think as if they were preparing to make changes to their environment.
Okay. And the sharing can be with anyone who might be interested in hearing about their ideas.
Yeah, well, I think they've added this with the community. I think in years past they had teams that were talking about they shared it with their family. They went to grandma's house and told grandma, and then they went to their brother's house and told their brother. They're looking for a broader sense of community. What have they done? Did they talk to people at their school? Did they go talk to the people who own the building, run the building? And so getting them to sort of become sort of power evangelists in some sense, right? Sharing what they've learned, sharing what they've come to understand, and sharing the excitement that they've generated out of it.
Can pieces on your robot, like attachments, can they be stuck in the parking lot? Can you set them in the parking lot?
I think it falls under the housekeeping rules. That's one of the things that area is for. Attachments that you're preparing to use or have just used can be in the parking lot. I'm sure of that.
For the research project, would it be okay to evaluate some sort of power plant in your community?
Good question. So this description is a paraphrasing of the longer description. It takes a whole page to describe what the research project is. I have a printout of it here somewhere. You're welcome to come up and read the whole thing. Again, I don't think they're really interested in constraining you as much as encouraging you to go find out more. So, in the case of a power plant, you'd need to figure out what you're going to do, explain it, more details to it. I can't imagine why not.
Could you go back to the map out of the thing for a minute, please? There. Is it possible to have like your dam cutting, like going across from the dock to next to the red? Yeah, like that.
Talking about here?
Yeah.
They specifically talk about being the two river sections east of base. So here's base, right here. So east of base would be this area.
Okay.
So it either needs to be somewhere on this river or somewhere on that river.
And if the flood thing goes like past the boundary of your map, does that count as not correctly placed?
Ask one more time.
If your dam is like right on the edge of the map, like right behind the oil thing, the coal thing, right there. Does that considered? Does that not count? Like is that considered hitting a house?
I believe the way it's described, it says touching. Okay, so dam. There it goes. It says touching both banks of any river section east of base. So you're talking about if the dam is leaning on one wall of the table?
Yeah.
So it's not touching the mat?
No, it is touching the map, but the flood thing behind it doesn't touch the map.
Oh, that one is specifically talked about in the Q&A. That's fine. Imagine the river extends endlessly. The referee can envision that he's got the dam behind. There's no house back here. So, if you slide the dam, if you've got a way of figuring out sliding the dam all the way up against the wall, there's no house that the flood's going to hit. So I can't see why they wouldn't allow that.
And is it also kind of possible to put like a red oil thing on a seagull?
On a seagull?
Yeah, the seagulls are on the boat.
Show me.
I don't know.
No, he wouldn't go for it.
Show me. It's a.
When putting the dam or setting up for pushing the dam into place, does the dam have to be entirely inside the base to start? Doesn't look like it's possible to get around the tracks of the coal car.
That's one that I think would need to be looked at in terms of the new rules. So starting position. So that's where that would fit under, starting position. Starting position. For all starts, every bit of the robot and any object in contact with it must be completely in base, with leniency for slight overextensions. The word slight is not defined here, so you should stay focused on the word completely. So the way the starting position is written, it would need to be completely in base.
If the robot was touching it when it started moving. It's not. It specifically says, and anything the robot is touching.
Yes. Let's see now. There's another thing. Humans can't enter scoring objects onto the field. Let's see. Go find that one. Rule number 22, muscle action. You are not allowed to cause anything but the robot to leave or extend out of base except as described in the starting procedure rule.
Okay.
And so if you could figure out how to get it out of base by the robot doing it and then have the robot pick it up again later, but the team couldn't set the dam outside of base with the robot in base, and it's effectively the same as what happens over in the parking lot. The robot can't come over in the parking lot and pick it up and then go do something with it.
Does base include the black road around it or just the white part?
Good question. Q&A. My guess is going to be it's going to include. He's had a tendency to be more lenient than strict. So for those that were around for the Ocean Odyssey year, there was this fuzzy barrier between the beach and the water. And the way the referees were instructed to think about it is to get fuzzier. So it wasn't be strict, it was be lenient, an inch. If you think it's within an inch of what you think is the transition, let it go. And so I would guess he's going to include the road in, but the Q&A will be the final determination.
Might be related to the definition of slight.
Yeah, well, he's not going to define slight.
For the windmills, if you attach like a stick, like a Lego piece that extends out, if that's touching the white, does it count, or does the whole windmill piece have to be touching the white?
The questions are getting very detailed now. So for the wind turbines, they are touching. So place wind turbines, they are touching any white area not directly outside base. So my guess would be, again, this is my guess, not the Q&A, my guess would be that some part of the wind turbine model must touch the area that it's the white area in order for it to score, not something attached to it. Any other questions? So if you got questions going on through the season, feel free to email us or call us and ask. The answers will be very similar to what's here. FLL Tech and the Q&A are the source, right? So everything I'm going to tell you is going to derive from what's being said there. I don't get to interpret the rules. I just get to echo back what is there in the Q&A and what's written in the rules here. And that's the way all the referees at all the tournaments you're going to be going to will be trained as well. They don't get to interpret the rules. They just get to basically judge your compliance with them. If there aren't any other questions, appreciate everybody coming out tonight. I wanted to say thank you again to Google for hosting this event. We've enjoyed having Google host us, and thank you.
So one form of energy is food, and we seem to have a lot of extra food in back. If anybody wants to take some home, there are these to-go boxes back there. And there's entire boxes of pizza, I think. So please help us use, not reuse, the food. Get rid of it, right. Thank you all for coming.